Welcome back, Spurs fans, to this Rodeo Road Trip edition of Casa De Spurs. Steven, how are you feeling about your Spurs, who are 2-0 on the Rodeo Road Trip?
I'm really excited. This is a pleasant surprise. The whole year has been a pleasant surprise, Trace.
Yeah, man.
It's fun. It's fun to watch the San Antonio Spurs play basketball right now.
Yeah, and then a quick note, I'm actually really bummed that we're not going to get to watch San Antonio Spurs play the Pistons on this road trip because there's some contact tracing going on, it looks like. So they're all in I don't know if it's the Pistons players or the Spurs player. I know some Spurs players or at least are in contact tracing. I don't know.
Yeah.
We might actually have gotten lucky. The Pistons have been playing pretty well recently, actually. They took the Lakers to double overtime. They beat Boston. They beat didn't they beat another good team? Am I missing? Am I blanking on that?
I feel like you're correct. I will admittedly say that I have not kept up with the Detroit Pistons as much as I should have this year.
I was looking earlier so I could sound smart and say who they beat. all I can remember is that they lost to the Pacers, but they've beaten they beat the Celtics, and then they hung in there pretty tight against the Lakers in double overtime. So not a terrible time to miss the Pistons, but the Spurs were looking pretty good too, were they not?
This team is surprisingly they're surprisingly good, and I don't mean that. I guess that just sounds like such a backdoor insult, but it's the truth. Like, we just kind of expected this team to just be going through some pretty dramatic growing pains, and it was going to be a very challenging year. I'll be the first to admit I thought there was going to be a lot more losses than there was wins. And, Zach Lowe was on the Mismatch podcast the other day, and they asked him, like, what was your most surprising team? And I think Kevin O'Connor was like, how about the Spurs? And he was like, no, they're punching above their weight. They're going to come back down there. So they're very, very easy to like dismiss the Spurs right now. But here they are, the Spurs. What is it? Death, taxes, Spurs. Like, those are the three things you can count on. They're fun to watch. They've got a lot of growth. I think the fun part about it, Trace, is they're winning games, and it's still very obvious that they have a ton of room for improvement. Like, this team could be way better than what it is, and they're still 17 and 11. What's the record?
They are 16 and 11. They're
16 and 11. So they're 16 and 11, and there's at least like three games where they could have won. Like, they could be 19 and 8. Like, they've got a few games in there that they could be better. So they're just a really fun team to watch, and the Rodeo Road Trip's off to a great start with the continued good basketball.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of umbrage with what Zach Harper said about Spurs punching above their weight. Zach Lowe.
Yeah.
Wrong Zach. There's too many Zach writers out there.
Too many. Yeah.
I'm gonna take. I don't think he earlier in the season. If you would have asked me a couple weeks ago, I would have said he's probably right. But the Spurs have finally started figuring out how to beat bad teams, which is is what I was really hoping to see on this Rodeo Road Trip. Was okay. They're gonna play a bunch of sub 500 teams, and that's sort of been, oddly enough, their kryptonite throughout this season. Like, they've played really strongly against some of the best teams in the league and beaten them. And so I got really nervous. Not really. But it was a little disappointing to see them let the Hawks back in as much. I mean, they were winning by 40 points. I never thought they were going to lose, but I was a little bit disappointed that they.
But it did just kind of make you go, "What's happening?"
Yeah. You're like, okay, we're 2 injuries away from being the team that can't beat the shorthanded Hawks. That's
exactly.
I mean, most teams are 2 injuries away from probably having issues with the Hawks, but the San Antonio bench made it very, very obvious. They were, they're not it's not the bench squad that like ripped on the Heat for 2 years straight in the finals.
Right. And I think that's the important part to notice is this team is probably more well-rounded, maybe like 1 through 7, 1 through 8 than they probably have ever been. Like, I feel like their top 8 guys, you can kind of swap them out. We've already seen like Lonnie in the starting lineup, Lonnie out of the starting lineup, Derek White in the starting lineup, he's out. We've even seen Vassell in there. And for the most part, now plus and minus analytics, somebody's going to come through and be like, yeah, right, this is wrong, this guy needs right. But for the most part, the team is structured the same. You're just kind of moving some parts around here. What's different is in past years, the Spurs have found themselves being like 10 or 11 deep, and they're not that anymore. Like they're not 10 players deep anymore. They're a solid 7 or 8 players deep. And that's okay because they're still better than they have been. A large credit to their success in recent days has really been defensively. It's just been all around. They've looked like a better defensive team. No offense to the guy's hip pointer, but some of that has to do with LaMarcus Aldridge not being in the lineup. Jakob Poetl has, I think, found what he needs to work on for the foreseeable future. Their teams are just going to pull him out and put him in screen and rolls. And I actually saw a little bit of it last night whenever they played against the Hornets, as the Hornets kept trying to pull Jakob out. And we were finally getting the primary ball handler's defender to not switch. And a lot of times it's just easy to just be like, switch. And then there's Jakob Poetl. And then whoever, we've saw it for weeks. Steph Curry did it. Trae Young did it. Everybody just pulls him out and they load up one side and there's Jakob Poetl guarding Steph Curry, and it's not fun. They finally were doing it last night against the Hornets, where they were going, no, we're not going to switch. Whoever that guard is that's guarding the ball handler, you're going to fight over the top, or you're going to quickly, Jakob's going to hedge and then he's going to get back. And that changed a lot of that changes a lot of their defensive options. So it's really, I just feel encouraged watching them because there's so many like headaches and hiccups that are in the middle of their offense and in the middle of their defense. And yet they're still sixth in the West. Yeah, they're sixth in the West. They're ahead of Denver and Golden State right now. They're barely behind Portland and Phoenix. Like, they're right in the thick of things, and they're past the quarter of the way of the season. So there's plenty of room for optimism.
Yeah. And, to hone in on Jakob a little more, I mean, the guy's recorded a block in 8 straight games.
Yeah.
He's got 4 blocks in 3 games. He's been his defensive positioning, like you teased out a second ago, has just been so much better. The adjustments that he's made. Earlier in the season, I feel like I remember being on the show telling you, man, like, Jakob is just a defensive liability.
Yeah.
And that was part of the reason why he couldn't get any. He was getting. So part of the reason, I should say, he was getting not as much playing time as LaMarcus Aldridge. Now he's actually, and now he's I don't know. He made 2 free throws in a row against Charlotte. That was pretty incredible.
In crunch time.
He's getting aggressive on the boards. He's really actually he's gone from what I thought might be a bust and a defensive liability to one, like a pillar of defense all of a sudden.
Yeah, he allows them to be very versatile while still being like a traditional big man. I thought it was an interesting matchup against him with Bismack Biyombo last night, because you saw the actual differences between those two guys. Bismack Biyombo is not a shot blocker. Neither was, what was it, Cody Zeller, whoever the Zeller brother was.
It's Tyler Zeller.
Was it Tyler? Well, we had one of them for like 20 minutes last year with the Spurs, and I can't remember which one's which, but whatever the Zeller brother was, not a shot blocker. And you get to see a perfect parallel for Jakob whenever he is a shot blocker. That makes him valuable on the court. He does do a lot of things. He's in a lot of screen and rolls, but whatever the Spurs are going to do in the short-term future of this season, but also in the long-term future, they're going to have to figure out what their big man situation is. And Jakob is auditioning he's got like first audition right here. And he's had some ups and downs. I think you've been harping on it more than anybody else I've heard, but why is this guy just not dunking the ball when he's 2 feet from the basket? Like, I personally am getting sick of these like papa shots. I hate that term. I hate hearing like Sean Elliott say it. Yeah, just a little papa shot right there. Like, I don't want to hear that. And I want to see this guy rip the rim off. And he should have done it 30 times against Charlotte. They had no shot blocking presence. But that's what's going to keep him relevant. Can he finish around the basket? Can he defend the rim? And so far, he's done a pretty good job of it. And he's clearly better than the alternative option in that regard.
And listen, I'll shut my mouth if he starts making like 60% of his papa shots. I'll give it a rest. But I don't think that's sustainable. I mean,
does a guy practice that?
I don't.
Like,
Because he has to. I think.
yeah, like you
What happens is
you
the big
dedicate 2 hours a day to practice that.
Yeah, Drew Eubanks just shoots hook shots, and Poeltl just works on his like bunny hops. And they don't get within 4 feet of the rim. They just stay
You're
out.
like,
Yeah,
well, I don't understand that. It's a
it
bizarre thing.
drives me out.
Although Drew's hook shot is it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those like, what are you doing? Oh, nice shot, bro. Like,
Yeah, I mean, he's not getting enough playing time that people are gonna like scheme around not
yeah.
letting him do that. But
it's not getting into the scouting report.
eventually, you might have to work on at least hook shotting from the other side. You might have to work on the lefty hook shot. I don't know. One thing about Jakob, actually, who's the guy that's filling in for Bill Land right now?
Andrew Monaco.
He called it a jump shot the other night. He said, "Oh, Poeltl with the jumper," and I was like, "Excuse me, no.
Let's not go that route."
I mean, he got 2 inches off the ground. I'll give you that, but I don't think I'm going to call that a jump shot.
He did jump and attempt a shot, so maybe off a technicality. He's got some game to him. We always forget this. Like Jakob was he like the offensive player of the year?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to say what draft pick was it. He was the 9th overall pick in his draft.
So he's a 9th overall draft pick, right? Which I think I made this argument the other day for Devin Vassell. Like he's the highest draft pick that the Spurs have had since Tim Duncan. I guess technically that's Jakob. I mean, maybe there's other. Sure. Maybe we don't want to open this can of worms. There's going to be other guys.
So it's fine.
Yeah, they didn't draft him. But the point is Jakob has some game to him, and he should have some game to him. And he's not going to be like your primary offensive player, but if he can do consistently what he's been doing, he's going to be a real key to their success moving forward. What do you do with him though whenever Aldridge comes back?
I am completely ready for a LaMarcus buyout. No, he's not going to get bought out. I am completely ready for LaMarcus Aldridge to just kind of be a Spur in name for the rest of the season and not be a Spur in any meaningful way on the basketball court. I could see this hip thing being the kind of thing that he's close to returning. Nope. There's a setback. What is a setback? It's just that we're, it's he's not quite in the same position as Blake Griffin is right now, but Blake Griffin is not playing anymore. I don't know if you read this. Blake Griffin not going to play for the Pistons this season
until they work out his future.
Yeah.
You mean where you're under contract and you're supposed to play basketball? That future? Okay.
Yeah. I guess it's very different for Blake Griffin because CCL has 2 years after this, and he's supposed to make like $39 million in both of those years, or at least next year he's scheduled for 39. Yeah. LaMarcus, of course, is an expiring contract, so he's somewhat of an asset in that sense. But like no one's like, we're kidding ourselves. I keep seeing it on Twitter. I know we talked about this last week, or maybe we didn't, but I'll say it anyways. Like, people are like, what do you realistically think we can get from LaMarcus Aldridge? I'm like, LaMarcus Aldridge can't even play basketball right now. What do you like? You're not trading. You can't trade a guy who can't play basketball. Never mind the fact that he wasn't playing good basketball before he got hurt. Like, no team is going to trade for what possibly LaMarcus Aldridge could be if he gets healthy and then is like 2 years younger all of a sudden. Like, that's no one's making that decision.
Like, honestly, he seems like a guy that maybe the Spurs don't buy him out, but he might be a piece that's attached in a trade for salary considerations. And then he goes to a team and never plays for them and immediately gets bought out. Yeah. So like, don't be surprised if like in a weird way, like LaMarcus Aldridge might get a ring this year. Like if you think of it like that, because he's a prime candidate to be traded to, I don't know, don't aggregate this, but he's going to be traded to Orlando in some deal, and then immediately he gets bought out, and then he's going to go sign with the Clippers for the veteran minimum, or he's going to sign with the Brooklyn Nets for the veteran minimum, or the Lakers for the that's the other thing.
Anthony Davis just.
I'm telling you, this is exactly, but this is why the NBA is so bizarre. Is now the Lakers they should be an immediate like trade destination for him, like. But you brought up a good point. Like, this guy's not even sniffing the court, and when he was, it wasn't pretty. And so you're not trading him to get anything for him. It's almost like you're trading him to as part of another trade, or to get him out of the way, like an addition by subtraction thing. So I don't know. I don't. It's going to be really interesting whenever he's healthy and they try and send him back out there in front of Jakob.
Is it going to be interesting or is it going to be infuriating?
It'll be infuriating. But that's all right. Sometimes whenever you are infuriated, you have to go and do whatever it is that you can to spice yourself up and get back into the swing of things. And that's why there's Whataburger, Trace. There's Whataburger for these exact types of things. And here's exactly what I want to talk to you about with Whataburger, the new limited time only barbecue bacon burger from Whataburger. Comes in a large bun with a large beef patty and smoked cheddar cheese and Monterey Jack cheese. Not that regular stuff. They actually smoke this stuff. It's the good cheese with some bacon. And of course, pickles and onions and Whataburger's own original barbecue sauce. This thing is clutch. It's a limited time thing. I don't know why this thing isn't on the menu full time, but it obviously keeps us moving forward and looking for something good. So if you haven't had it yet, go to your local Whataburger. I know it's cold out there, San Antonio, but find one that's open and go get your bacon barbecue or your barbecue bacon burger from your local neighborhood Whataburger. All right. So Trace, that was some real shifty cinematography right
Nice.
there. Speaking of Blake Griffin and the Pistons, the San Antonio Spurs have canceled that, but they've played. I guess, how do I say this? Like you said, due to contact tracing, they're not playing against the Pistons. Could be a good thing because given our struggles on the second games of back-to-back, maybe that'll help things out. But it's obviously unfortunate that we're in this situation. I think it goes in theme with the entire pandemic, but it's part of the game right now. It's another wrinkle to the game of basketball. But I think I actually had the Pistons as being one of their drop games. Or was it the following game? I don't remember. But
I don't remember which one you thought they were going to. I think it was one of them because it was a back-to-back. So I think we both thought they would lose. Maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But they're still playing well on this Rodeo Road Trip, Trace. So how's your view of the landscape for the rest of this trip? Should they actually get to play some more of those games?
Yeah, now I'm starting to think they could just go undefeated. Like let's just say the Detroit game doesn't happen until they release the second half of the season, which I think is the most likely outcome here because there aren't that many off days.
Yeah.
The only other one I could think of would be actually if they tacked on. I mean, I don't know what Detroit's schedule is. Just purely looking at the Spurs schedule, they could just extend the Rodeo Road Trip by one day and then make OKC Detroit a back-to-back at the end of the road trip. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think actually they're going to run the table. I think they're going to take all 6 of these. There's not a scary matchup.
There's not anything that just intimidates us out there. Especially coming up here. I will say though that the New York Knicks, man, Julius Randle just dropped a 40 burger tonight. Boy, you talk about talent that the Lakers have lost in order to get. I mean, they got a ring out of it last year in the bubble, but
they're not crying.
They're not crying about it. Going back to our pick conversation, our producer Dan is telling us that LaMarcus Aldridge was the number 2 pick in the draft back in 2006. Rudy Gay was the number 8th pick in the draft, and DeMar DeRozan was also the number 9th pick in the draft. So that goes to where Jakob Poetl was at. Let's not start opening up that can of worms. I think I might have created a monster with that. But let's talk about your boy real fast. Is Keldon Johnson out of a slump? Is he through a slump? And first of all, do we care that he was in a slump?
No, I never. And I hope I didn't give you that impression because
no,
I just thought it was worth noting that Keldon Johnson he was definitely in a slump. For it was 4 games, but I think that counts. He did not have a good 4 games, and I only wanted to call it out because I feel like so far Keldon Johnson has kind of been immune to Spurs to like the Spurs.
He hasn't gotten it yet.
He hasn't gotten any of it, and Lonnie Walker has one bad game, and everyone wants to stick the wolves on him. Of course, he has one good game, and everyone wants to pay him the max. And so Keldon is just Keldon has been better than anyone not named DeJounte Murray this season. Anyone of the under 30 squad, I will say, and has gotten none of the vitriol of or any of the praise. He's just he's just cruising along, and I just thought it was worth noting that he was in a slump, and we weren't really hearing about it from anybody.
Yeah, Keldon's, again, his strengths are his ability to attack the basket, but great shooter he is not. Yeah, maybe that'll come. I think I remember earlier in the season, like Sean Elliott and Bill Land, they ran a replay of him shooting like a 3-ball, and the ball actually left it left the camera and then like came back in. So he's not a lights out shooter. His free throw percentage has been a little bit suspect. Do you have that in front of you by chance? What's he shooting?
Is 77%.
Okay, I thought it was way worse than that, so I feel bad. But I feel like there was a week or so.
It's gotten better. It's gone a lot better, and I think probably the bigger problem might have been earlier in the season. He was getting absolutely demolished and not getting to the line. So the few times he did get to the line, he probably was so concussed from getting thrown to the floor, didn't make the shot.
That's a fun part about his game too, is that he's doing this when he's not even getting, like, he doesn't even really have the respect of the NBA yet, like the NBA officials, and so he's still getting these calls from time to time. But he's gonna have to learn to like finish those free throws and not leave points on the board. Another guy that I think it's been fun to watch and everybody loves him right now, and also has not gotten any Spurs Twitter angst, is Devin Vassell. He can currently do no wrong.
Yeah.
And we all know how that goes. Eventually one day something's going to go horribly wrong and everyone will turn their back on him very quickly. But in the meantime, boy, he's fun, man. He is long and lengthy. He makes good decisions. He makes like smart decisions with the basketball. And I think it's a good problem to have, but the Spurs are going to have some tough decisions to make about the future of their backcourt here. Again, coming off a fabulous game by Derek White and DeJounte Murray last night against the Hornets, but I don't want to be their GM right now.
No, you do. Don't tell me that.
Okay,
you would kill to be their GM. That was actually, so that Charlotte game. Speaking of Derek White, I think that was my favorite DeJounte Derek game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there haven't been that many of them, which is bizarre considering how long they've been teammates. But like that was by far my favorite DeJounte Derek game. DeJounte becoming a consistent player has made it so much easier for the two of them to share the court together.
Yes.
I think probably going into this season, the biggest concern about those two sharing the court is that one of them would just stink themselves right off of it, and you wouldn't get the benefit of both those guys being out there and playing their games. And I thought there might be too much overlap, and there's really not. There's no they play very different style. Mm-hmm. Derek's a little more willing to throw himself into things. DeJounte has actually learned how to be really smart and crafty on defense, and I think it's just been working out. It's been working out like way better than I would have imagined. Yeah,
they really had Trey Young frustrated the other night, and last night against the Hornets, the same with LaMelo Ball. It's just a pain whenever you finally get a switch off. You're being guarded by DeJounte Murray, and you finally get a switch, only to have Derek White pop out on you. And then you, let me get another screen, and you switch back, and then now there's DeJounte Murray again. So my fun part is like, man, who's going to be that third guy, that like the third defensive guy? It's not going to be DeMar DeRozan. Everybody can, fine, whatever. But say it again.
He's been improved there.
I think so too. I do think so too. He's not ever just going to be a lockdown defender on the ball, but he's made some really good rotations recently. He's in the right spot. He at least understands when to switch and when not to switch on some things. But if like Keldon can do that, even Lonnie, I want to talk about Lonnie real fast on the defensive end.
Talk about Lonnie.
He's a freak athlete, man. He's faster. I think he's a better athlete than anybody that's ever been in a Spurs uniform. But it's all up here, man. Like he's able to physically like keep up with guys, but he has a lot of he could be a lot better defender. He should be, I feel like, a Derek White type defender. I don't know that he's ever going to be like a steal the ball away from you like DeJounte Murray is. Like he just doesn't have the length like DeJounte does, but the way that Derek White, like you said, he's constantly throwing his body in front of guys. He's jumping passing lanes. Like we haven't seen that from Lonnie. I think so much of what we're seeing from Lonnie on the defensive end is his desire to like keep up, like keep pace with guys. But you can't do that. Yeah, he doesn't want to get burned. Exactly.
His priority on defense is not getting burned.
Right. But that also leads for a lot of like ticky-tack fouls and a whistle where he's going, what do I do? It's like, I would rather, I'm not a coach, I'm not an NBA coach, everybody knows this, but I would rather you like foul the guy, like commit to fouling him, or get out of the way. Like, but this thing where he can physically like keep speed with his defender until they get into the shot and then it's a ticky-tack foul or it's like a bump foul or something like that. That's the part that's getting like frustrating. So I really hope he played much better last night, and he played well offensively with DeMar DeRozan in the game. So I think that's something to be noted. But I'd really like to see more from him defensively.
Yeah, his defense is, it almost he's very different from DeMar DeRozan, but it almost feels like his ceiling is like being hidden on defense like DeMar DeRozan is right now. And like
well said,
DeMar's getting put into DeMar more than anybody is probably benefiting from DeJounte and Derek being on the court at the same time, because he can like when you can tell when he's engaged and he picks his spots. He'll make some like really nice defensive plays, and like he'll get himself in the way without fouling and cause some real confusion down for the opposing team's offense. And he's not a breakaway thief or anything, but that's fine. Like he doesn't have to have that as part of his game. And Lonnie Walker, the thing is, he does have that speed. So if he can maximize himself being on the court with Lonnie and Derek, he's gonna get like 10 alley-oops a game. Maybe not.
Good.
When DeJounte Murray has an eight steal game, Lonnie Walker better have like 5 dunks like immediately off of those steals. Like that's the kind of player he has to be if he's gonna really cause some damage. And to do that, he's gonna have to also play good enough defense against like the third scoring. Like that's the thing. Like we're talking about like Lonnie Walker on like the third scoring option getting taken to task, and that's at that point, like just put Rudy Gay in there.
Yeah, exactly. Derek and DeJounte are always going to guard the two best players on the opposing team, or at least the two best wings or guards. And fortunately for DeJounte, he's long enough where he can guard some pretty big dudes. So Lonnie's not even going to often draw the most intense mashup. Athletically, he should be excelling at that. But I really hope we don't see him turning into like somebody that he's trying to use his athleticism to just keep pace rather than jumping. But there was a moment in the game last night where I think he was guarding LaMelo Ball, and the screen came up, and he was prepared for the switch, and he made a very traditional like college level switch, or not a couple of switch, like a hedge, where he knew the ball was coming to the right side of the court, and so he kind of jumped on top of the screen and forced LaMelo Ball to go left, but he didn't give himself enough time to recover. Like, so he basically just gave him a one dribble jump shot. And I think he even got a foul like on the shot. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this is Lonnie knowing that in college he can make that play. Nobody else is like probably fast enough to keep up with him. And so he can jump out of position, force a player to one side, and then he can recover. But he can't do that in the NBA all the time. He can do that sometimes, but he can't do it all the time. So it requires him to be a better defender and actually not jump the hedge too far in advance. He's got to stay home. So those are things that he's got to learn. But I also hope we don't turn him into just a 3-point, to a jump shooter. He's way too athletic. You've talked about it before. Like, this guy should be Statue of Liberty dunking stuff all the time, at least getting to the rim. And I feel like we see him a lot of times like turning into a spot up jump shooter. Like, he's not JJ Redick. He's Lonnie Walker. Like, let's let him be Lonnie Walker.
Yeah. And that said, he only made 1 3 last night, but it was a really pretty one. I'll give him that. Yeah. I mean, when his jump shot is working, it's a really a beautiful sight to behold. And I just don't understand where it goes. Where does it go?
Yeah, I don't know, and that'll be something for the Spurs again. They're not a title contender yet, so they don't have to start nickel and diming like specific pieces of their roster. Like they're not. I think a team like the Lakers or the Clippers, they're looking for specific guys like a JJ Redick or a Kyle Korver type, who it's like, okay, this is the skill set that we need. The Spurs aren't really in that phase of their franchise development, so they're still getting guys who can shoot threes, but they're not 3-point shooters. Like these are not guys that are just knockdown 3-point shooters. And so because of that, you have to focus on the skill sets that your players have. And right now the Spurs have 5 young guards who they're lightning quick, they're super athletic, and they're slashers, they're attackers. And I think that's kind of my one quibble about the state of the Spurs offense is we're still expecting them to move the ball like the 2014 Spurs, even though, and it has worked at times, but this new installment of the Spurs is not that beautiful game 2014. This new installment of the Spurs is a little bit run and gun. Like you said, you get 8 steals. You should be throwing lobs all over the court. Like that's what you're wanting out of that.
Yeah. I will say, so one thing, you brought up the fact that they have 5 young guards again. And I wanted, something I read the other night, interesting to me, was that Keldon Johnson has credited a lot of his early success as a direct result of mentorship with DeMar DeRozan. Now, I bring this up because the Spurs do have a lot of guards. It's very common for people to say that the Spurs need to trade a guard, and most people want to trade DeMar DeRozan because he's older and they don't care about him anymore. I think, I think this is. I already thought that DeMar DeRozan shouldn't be traded. You know this, but I think I've just added some more fuel to my what do I have to do for DeMar DeRozan to get Spurs Twitter to appreciate the guy some more? I think if you were going to trade anyone right now, I think it's the untapped potential of Lonnie Walker, and you try to keep DeMar DeRozan around, and that's assuming that and that's probably packaged with something. If a trade had to be made, right?
Sure.
I think that's the one that I would do, and I think DeMar has become the person that you always hoped that Tony Parker would be, a kind of guy who is actually invested in these young guys and is assuredly making it. I think the way Keldon Johnson has started to get calls in the paint and be more aggressive is probably a result of the way DeMar DeRozan plays a little bit like that as well. Keldon doesn't have the step back jumper, but they're both very aggressive attackers.
They like him. He's still producing. You have access to re-sign him. Why would you let him go?
Yeah, that's easier said than I did. Steven, I don't know when the Spurs are going to play basketball again. Hopefully it's on Wednesday night, but we'll be there. We'll be watching. Thank you all for listening to us talk about the Spurs, and we'll see you on Twitter and on this show next week. Go Spurs, go.
Go Spurs, go.